The surveillance expert I hired whispered, "Sir, review the footage yourself. She's not documenting his decline, she's manufacturing it." My daughter-in-law had filled a hard drive with video to have me declared incompetent. But when my son finally pressed play, the footage revealed her planting pills, hiding keys, and rehearsing her testimony to the court. I was Robert Vance, a 63-year-old architect with a 7-figure estate and a sharp mind. But the petition my son handed me claimed I couldn't feed myself or manage a dime. It was filed by his wife, Claire, who'd moved in to help. Her goal was a guardianship that would hand her control of everything I'd built. To stop her, I needed to prove her evidence was a fraud. And the only person who could see it was the one person she'd convinced I was losing my mind, my own son. Claire's move into the guest house that spring felt like a blessing at first. My wife, Alina, had passed 2 years prior, and the silence in our Austin home had become a physical weight. My son David, her husband of 8 years, suggested it. "Dad, she can help with the groceries, the driving. You shouldn't be alone so much." I was 61, running my own architecture firm, Vance and Associates, with a portfolio of commercial projects across 3 states. I didn't feel I needed help. But I missed the noise of family. The first 6 months were smooth. Claire, a former paralegal, was organized. She handled mail, made doctor's appointments, even helped reconcile my business books. She'd compliment my designs, ask about my clients. I felt seen. David visited more often, and for the first time since Alina's death, the house felt alive. The shift was subtle. It began with my keys. I'd leave them on the hall table and they'd vanish. I'd find them an hour later in the kitchen drawer or my jacket pocket. Claire would say, "You must have moved them, Robert. Short-term memory is the first to go." Then it was the stove. I'd boil water for tea, turn my back to get a cup, and Claire would dash in, clicking the burner off. "You left it on. You could have burned the house down." The dial was clearly still in the high position, but she'd already turned it. I started doubting myself. The incidents escalated, but always when David was visiting. At a family dinner, I'd reach for the salt and clumsily knock over a wine glass. Claire would leap up, mopping the spill, saying to David, "He's been so shaky lately." I wasn't shaky. It was a simple accident, but David's concerned look would linger. Another time, I couldn't find a project file for a major client. I turned my office upside down. Claire calmly produced it from my briefcase later. "It was right where you left it, Robert. Maybe we should talk about getting some help in the office." Her language changed. She stopped calling me Dad. I was Robert. She began speaking to me in a slow, simplified manner, as if English was my second language. "Robert, did you take your pills? Let me check for you." She purchased a large, weekly pill organizer and made a show of filling it every Sunday at the kitchen island, a silent performance of my supposed need. The real turning point came on the 4th of July. David and Claire hosted a barbecue at my home. I was manning the grill, a task I'd done for 40 years. Claire brought me a plate of raw burgers. As I placed them on the grate, she stumbled beside me, jostling my arm. 2 patties fell into the flames, causing a flare-up. She screamed, "David, he's burning himself." She grabbed my wrist, pulling me back. Everyone turned. David rushed over, seeing the flames, seeing Claire holding my arm protectively. "Dad, maybe you should sit down. Let me handle the fire." The narrative was set in front of 10 witnesses. I was a hazard. After that, David's visits became interventions. "Dad, Claire's worried. She says you've been forgetting bills, that you got lost driving home from the firm last week." I had done no such thing. My desk calendar, my GPS history, I offered to show him. He waved it away. "She's not making it up, Dad. Why would she?" That's when I found the first camera, a tiny, dark lens nestled in the smoke detector in the living room ceiling. I only noticed because the plastic was ever so slightly cleaner than the dusty casing around it. My blood ran cold. I didn't touch it. I just stood there, under its unblinking eye, realizing my home was no longer my own. I hired a discreet security consultant the next day, a former investigator named Marcus. He swept the house and found 4 more, one in the kitchen facing the stove, one in the hallway outside my bedroom, one in my home office, and a pinhole in the guest house living room where Claire and David often talked. Marcus showed me the feed on a monitor. Crystal clear, 24/7 recording with audio. "This is a professional-grade setup," he murmured. "The storage hub isn't in the house. It's likely cloud-based, accessible remotely." Claire was building a case. Every staged stumble, every forgotten key, every accidental burner left on, it was all being documented. She wasn't just suggesting I was declining, she was creating proof. I confronted David alone. I showed him a photo of the camera and the smoke detector. His face paled, then hardened. "Claire told me you were getting paranoid, making up stories. She said you accuse her of something like this." He refused to look at the photo again. "She's trying to protect you, Dad. And if this is how you react, maybe she's right to be concerned." The legal hammer fell on a Tuesday morning in October. David stood in my office doorway, not meeting my eyes. He held out a thick stack of papers. "You need to see this." The heading was stark. "In the matter of the guardianship of Robert James Vance." The petition, filed by Claire Elizabeth Vance, alleged I was unable to manage my financial affairs and posed a danger to my own physical health due to severe cognitive decline. It cited specific dated incidents: the stove left on, the lost client file, the grill fire. It claimed I had squandered business funds, though no evidence was given. It requested an emergency hearing and that Claire be appointed as my temporary guardian, giving her immediate control over my finances, my property, and my medical decisions. I looked up at my son. "David, you know this isn't true." He shifted his weight, his gaze on the floor. "The court appoints a doctor, Dad, an evaluator. Just cooperate with them. If everything's fine, it'll get dismissed. And until then, she controls my life, my firm, my money." "It's for your own good," he said, the phrase chilling in its emptiness. He left me standing there, the pages trembling in my hands. The court-ordered neurologist was scheduled for the following week. Claire had already provided him with a family history and the curated video clips. My fate hinged on a 1-hour evaluation. I had to prove my competence against a file of manufactured evidence. Marcus, my investigator, had one piece of advice. "The footage is stored remotely. We can't access it without her credentials, but if we could see what she's been reviewing, what she's been saving for the court, it would tell the real story." There was only one person whose laptop was almost certainly logged into that cloud account. The one person who still had partial access to the house. The one person I had to turn from a pawn into an ally. My son. And he wouldn't even return my calls. I was out of time, out of options, and staring at the end of my autonomy. Then, on the eve of the evaluation, my phone lit up with a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was a single, chilling sentence from David. "I need to see you. Don't tell Claire. I think I made a terrible mistake." I met David at a diner 20 miles outside Austin, a place with cracked vinyl booths and no one we knew. He looked shattered, his hands wrapped around a cold coffee cup. He didn't wait for me to sit. "She left her laptop open last night. I saw the login for the cloud storage. The folder was called Exhibit A." His voice was a raw whisper. "I watched 10 minutes of it, Dad. Just 10 minutes. He pulled his own laptop from a bag, screen tilted away from the diner's few patrons. "This is from the kitchen camera, timestamp September 12th. The video played. It showed my empty kitchen in the morning light. Claire walked in, looked directly at the camera above the fridge and smiled. A cold, knowing smile. She then walked to the stove, turned a burner knob to high, and placed an empty kettle on it. She waited 30 seconds, then called out, 'Robert, are you in here?' She then walked out of frame. 10 seconds later, she rushed back in, gasping dramatically for an unseen audience, and turned the burner off. The performance was chilling in its casual precision. 'There's more,' David said, his jaw tight. He clicked another file. 'Hallway camera, August 3rd. This time, Claire was on her phone packing. Her voice was clear on the audio. 'No, the neurologist is next week. I've already emailed him the highlights. The grill fire, the lost keys, the missed bills. He's expecting significant impairment.' She paused, listening. The business accounts are the real prize. Vance and Associates has over $2 million in receivables and assets. Once I'm guardian, I can petition the court to have him declared unfit to run it. We'll liquidate the firm, pay off our debts, and still have $1 million left. David paused the video. The man on the other end of the call had a distinct, raspy voice. David looked at me, his eyes hollow. That's Martin Greeley, Claire's brother. He was disbarred for embezzling from client trusts 5 years ago. The plan snapped into focus. It wasn't just about control, it was a coordinated asset strip. My firm, my life's work, was the target. David opened a third file. This one was not a video, but a scanned document. A life insurance policy taken out in my name 6 months prior with Claire as the primary beneficiary. The death benefit was for $1.5 million. My blood turned to ice. "Where did you find this?" I managed to ask. "In a locked folder on the same cloud drive," David said, his voice breaking. "She's been paying the premiums from a joint account she convinced me to open for household expenses." The stakes were no longer just my freedom. They had just become mortal. We sat in silence, the weight of the betrayal pressing down. David finally spoke. "I believed her. Every time she said she was worried, every time she explained away your lapses, I believed her. I thought I was helping you." He was crying now, quiet tears of shame and rage. "I handed you the petition. I served you to them on a platter." I reached across the table, gripped his arm. "We stop it now, together." We had 5 days until the court-ordered evaluation, 5 days to turn a dossier of fraud into a defense. My investigator, Marcus, met us at my office that night. We showed him the footage. He whistled low. "This is gold, but it's not enough for court. We need the raw data. The metadata, the unedited streams, the access logs showing she curated these clips. We need to prove intent." Marcus explained the next move. "The cloud service she uses has a legal disclosure process. If we file a civil suit for invasion of privacy and intentional infliction of emotional distress, we can subpoena the entire account. But that takes weeks. We don't have weeks." He had another idea. "The cameras themselves transmit to a local hub before uploading. If we can find that hub in your house, we can clone the hard drive. We get everything." The next 48 hours were a silent war conducted under my own roof. Claire was all saccharine concern, talking loudly about the upcoming doctor's visit for my benefit. David played his part, nodding along, pretending to be the worried son. Meanwhile, Marcus and I, under the cover of night, swept the house for the transmission hub. We found it on the third night, hidden in the attic crawl space, wired into the home's network. A small black box with a blinking green light. Marcus cloned its drive onto 2 external hard drives in less than 20 minutes. "This is the mother load," he murmured. "Every frame from every camera from day one." Back in my office, we dove into the raw footage. It was a horrifying documentary of my own manipulation. We saw Claire rehearsing her concerned expressions in a mirror. We saw her on the phone with her brother, mapping out the legal strategy. "The key is the emergency order," she said in one clip. "Once I have temporary guardianship, I can move him to a facility, isolated. Then we can really get to work on the accounts." But then we found something we weren't looking for. A file from the guest house camera dated the week after Claire moved in. It showed Claire and David having an argument. David's voice was raised. "This feels wrong, Claire. He's fine." Claire's response was icy. "He's a 61-year-old man living alone. He's vulnerable. And his business is a gold mine. We're drowning in debt. You want to keep living paycheck to paycheck. This is the plan. Stick to the plan." David had protested weakly. It was the first crack. The most damning clip, however, was timestamped 2 days before the petition was filed. Claire was on the phone with her brother again. "The neurologist is Dr. Evans. I've already made a family donation to his research fund. 10,000. He understands the situation." My heart stopped. She hadn't just manufactured evidence, she had bought the evaluation. We had our proof, but we had a problem. If we presented this to the court now, Claire would simply deny it, claim we fabricated the footage. We needed an impartial witness, a way to authenticate it that she couldn't challenge. Marcus had a contact, a forensic video analyst who used to work for the FBI. He could verify the footage was original, unaltered, and pull the digital fingerprints that tied it to the cameras in my house. We sent the hard drive to him by secured courier. The clock was ticking down, 48 hours to the evaluation. Then the next morning, Claire made her move. I came downstairs to find her waiting in the living room, a sickly sweet smile on her face. Two strangers in suits stood beside her. "Robert," she said, "these gentlemen are from Safe Harbor Senior Living. Dr. Evans recommended we do a pre-assessment tour today so you're comfortable with the facility." One of the men stepped forward. "We have a lovely room available, Mr. Vance. We specialize in memory care." They were trying to take me out of the house. Once I was in their car and their facility, it would be infinitely harder to fight. David appeared at the top of the stairs, his face a mask of panic. I had to think fast. "I'm not going anywhere without my son," I said firmly. Claire's smile tightened. "David has to work, Robert. He can visit you later." David came down the stairs. "I'm going with him." The tension in the room was a live wire. One of the men reached for my arm. "It's just a tour, sir." I pulled back. "You touch me without my consent and it's assault. I am of sound mind and I am refusing." I looked directly at Claire. "I am not getting in that car." The standoff lasted a full minute. Finally, Claire waved the men off. "Fine, we'll reschedule after your evaluation tomorrow." Her eyes promised retribution. That night, David didn't come home. He texted me once. "She knows I'm wavering. She's watching me. I'm at a hotel. I have the other hard drive." We were fractured and Claire was circling. The evaluation was in 12 hours. My fate rested on a doctor she had bribed and forensic evidence that was still in transit. I sat alone in my office, the walls feeling thinner than ever, knowing the next move would be the most dangerous of my life. I had to walk into that evaluation and confront the man who had been paid to declare me incompetent. And I had to do it without the one piece of evidence that could save me. Dr. Evans's office was a study in sterile authority. Framed diplomas, a brain scan poster, the faint smell of antiseptic. He was a man in his 50s with a practiced, neutral expression. Claire sat in the corner, a notebook on her lap, the picture of devoted concern. She had already handed him a thick file, my file. The evaluation began with simple questions. The date, the current president, counting backward from 100 by sevens. I focused, answering each one calmly and correctly. I could see a flicker of something in Evans's eyes, not surprise, but recalculation. Claire's narrative of a confused old man wasn't matching the articulate person in front of him. Then he moved to the incidents. "Your daughter-in-law has documented some concerning events. A stove left on unattended, getting lost while driving. Can you tell me about those?" This was the trap. If I denied them outright, I'd look defensive, paranoid. If I acknowledged them, I'd validate her lies. I took a slow breath. I'm aware of the allegations. I'm also aware that my home has been under unauthorized video surveillance for the past 7 months. The footage of those specific events shows them being staged. I have that evidence being forensically authenticated as we speak. I kept my eyes locked on Evans. I didn't look at Claire, but I could feel her freeze in her chair. Evans's pen stopped. "Staged. Manufactured," I clarified, "to create a false record of cognitive decline. The goal is a guardianship for financial exploitation." I let the accusation hang in the sterile air. "You were provided with a curated summary, doctor, not a complete picture. I'm here to provide the rest." Claire found her voice, a wounded tremor in it. "Robert, please. This is the paranoia I told you about, doctor, the accusations." "The footage has time stamps and audio, Claire," I said, finally turning to her. "It includes your phone calls planning this with your brother, Martin Greeley. The $10,000 donation to Dr. Evans's research fund is mentioned quite clearly." The room went silent. Evans's face went from neutral to carefully blank, a mask sliding into place. The bribe was now on the table, a live grenade between us. He closed his file folder slowly. "Mr. Vance, these are very serious allegations. This evaluation is about your mental state, not unverified family disputes. They are directly related, I insisted. My mental state is what's being fraudulently portrayed to enable a crime. Ignoring that isn't neutrality, doctor, it's complicity. He stood up, ending the session. I have enough for my assessment. I'll be in touch with my findings, which will be submitted to the court. His voice gave nothing away. I had thrown a bomb into his lap, but I had no idea if it would detonate or if he would simply toss it aside. I left the office feeling hollow. I had played my only card without the verified evidence in hand. It was a colossal gamble. Claire brushed past me in the hallway, her mask of concern replaced by pure, venomous fury. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was Marcus, my investigator. The forensic report is in. The footage is 100% authentic. No edits, no alterations. The analyst pulled the digital signatures from the camera hardware. It's Cortretti. It was the first good news in months. He also traced the donation Claire mentioned. It was a wire transfer from a shell company linked to her brother, Martin, to a foundation that then made a grant to Evans's department. It's a paper trail. We had it, the weapon to kill the petition. I called my lawyer, a sharp litigator named Sarah Cohen I'd retained after the petition was served. We file a motion to dismiss, I said, and we attach the forensic report and the financial trace as exhibits. We accuse Claire and Evans of fraud on the court. Sarah was cautious. It's strong, Robert, but the court is conservative. They don't like messy family drama. And Evans is a court-approved evaluator. He'll deny everything. It becomes a he said, she said until a full trial and a temporary guardianship could still be granted in the meantime. Before we could file anything, Claire struck back, harder and faster than we anticipated. That evening, a process server arrived at my door. It wasn't a motion from her lawyer. It was an emergency ex parte order from a different judge granted hours earlier. Based on a supplemental declaration from Dr. Evans, stating I had displayed acute paranoia and aggressive confrontational behavior during the evaluation that posed an immediate risk to my own safety and financial assets. The court had granted Claire's request for a temporary emergency guardianship. Effective immediately, I was stripped of control. The order froze my personal and business bank accounts. It barred me from entering my own firm's offices. It appointed Claire as temporary guardian of my estate and my person, and it included a provision for a welfare check by law enforcement to ensure I was secure. It was a complete legal coup. Evans had retaliated. He provided the judicial cover Claire needed to bypass the normal process and seize power. The system, manipulated by a bribed expert, had just handed her the keys to my entire life. Minutes after the server left, a sheriff's deputy and a social worker pulled into my driveway. Claire was with them. The deputy was polite but firm. "Mr. Vance, we're here to execute a court order. Ms. Vance is now your temporary guardian. We need to ensure you're safe and that there's no unrest." The social worker smiled blandly. "We'd like to do a home assessment." I was a prisoner in my own home, supervised by the state. Claire walked in like a conqueror. She went straight to my office, to the desk where the hard drives were. They were gone. I had moved them to a safety deposit box that morning. Her face tightened when she saw the empty space. She began her assessment, telling the social worker how cluttered the house was, a sign of cognitive overwhelm. She pointed to unopened mail, a single dish in the sink. David arrived then, his face ashen. He saw the deputy, saw Claire with the social worker. "What's going on?" Claire spoke for me. "The court acted, David, for Dad's own safety. He had a terrible episode with the doctor today. He's not well." David looked at me and I gave a minute shake of my head. His hands clenched into fists, but he said nothing. The betrayal was complete. After an hour, the deputy and social worker left, satisfied I wasn't an immediate danger to myself. Claire stayed. She handed me a new set of rules. I was to surrender my car keys, my credit cards, my checkbook. I was to provide passwords for all my computers and online accounts. A caregiver would be coming daily to monitor me. "It's for your own good, Robert," she said, the cold smile back. I was now under house arrest, financially strangled, with my accomplice son watching in paralyzed horror. My lawyer, Sarah, was furious but grim. Ex parte orders are hard to overturn. The judge only heard her side and Evans's. We have to request a full hearing to dissolve it, but the earliest we can get on the calendar is 3 weeks. 3 weeks was a lifetime. Claire could drain accounts, liquidate assets, do irreversible damage. That night, locked in my bedroom, I used a hidden old cell phone to call Marcus. "We need to go deeper," I said. "Claire's brother, Martin Greeley, the disbarred lawyer. If this is a pattern, if they've done this before, we find it. We also dig into Evans. A $10,000 bribe isn't his first." Marcus worked through the night. By morning, he had a breakthrough that changed everything. Martin Greeley hadn't just been disbarred for embezzlement. 6 years ago, he had been the attorney for an elderly widow in San Antonio named Estelle Bergman. A guardianship petition was filed for her by a concerned niece. The evaluator was Dr. Alan Evans. Temporary guardianship was granted. Within 4 months, Mrs. Bergman's substantial stock portfolio was liquidated, her house sold. She died in a care facility 8 months later. The guardian, the niece, was Martin Greeley's then-girlfriend. The estate was drained. It was a blueprint. Our case wasn't an innovation, it was a repeat, a grift they'd perfected. Marcus found a second, similar case in Houston, with different family member names but the same fingerprints. Martin Greeley lurking in the background, and Dr. Evans providing the crucial medical evidence. We were looking at a criminal conspiracy, not a family dispute. Then Marcus dug into Evans's finances. The research grants from opaque foundations were frequent and sizable, coinciding with his evaluations in contested guardianship cases. We had the start of a pattern, but it was circumstantial. We needed something undeniable. David, consumed with guilt, became our inside source. While Claire was busy changing locks on my office, he accessed her email on her iPad, which was still synced to his cloud account. He found the mother lode, an email chain with Martin titled Project Patriarch. It detailed the entire plan, from camera placement to targeting Dr. Evans. It included a spreadsheet estimating the value of my business and a timeline for liquidation and distribution. In one chilling exchange, Martin wrote, "Once he's in the facility, accelerate the life insurance. Natural causes in that population are rarely questioned." David forwarded it all to me, his message just 2 words: "I'm sorry." He was finally all in, but we were now on a cliff's edge. Claire would soon realize her communications were compromised. We had the evidence of the conspiracy. We had the blueprint of their past crimes. But we were still trapped by a court order that gave the conspirators legal authority over me. The hearing to dissolve the temporary guardianship was still 2 weeks away. Sarah Cohen laid out our Hail Mary. We go on the offensive. We file a new motion, not just to dismiss the guardianship, but accusing Claire, Martin Greeley, and Dr. Evans of conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse, fraud, and corruption. We attach everything: the footage, the forensic report, the email chain, the evidence of past schemes. We request an emergency hearing and ask the judge to refer the matter to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation. It was a nuclear option. It would make a public spectacle of the corruption, but it would also force a judge to look at the whole sordid picture. We spent the next 48 hours assembling the motion, a 100-page dossier of betrayal. We filed it electronically at 9 a.m. on a Thursday. The response was swift, but not from the judge. At 11 a.m., Martin Greeley himself, accompanied by a man I didn't recognize, appeared at my front door. Claire let them in. Greeley was all false charm and sharp eyes. "Robert, we need to talk. This has gotten out of hand. We can make this all go away." The man with him was introduced as a mediator. It was a shakedown. Greeley laid out the offer. I would withdraw the motion, consent to a voluntary guardianship for a period of 1 year, after which it would be reviewed. In return, Claire would ensure I had a comfortable allowance and could remain in my home. They would manage the business but not liquidate it. The life insurance policy would be canceled. It was an offer to become a well-funded prisoner in exchange for their immunity. "If you refuse," Greeley said, the charm vanishing, "the temporary order stands. We will have you declared incompetent in a full hearing. We will liquidate the business to pay for your care in a locked facility. You will spend your last years as a ward of the state, and we will still control the money. And your son," he glanced at David, who stood rigid in the doorway, "will be named as a cooperating party in the petition. His career, his reputation, gone." They had found my last pressure point. My son. They were threatening to destroy him if I didn't surrender. I looked at David, saw the terror in his eyes. This was the final, cruelest twist. I could save myself and expose them, but only by sacrificing my son. Or I could surrender and protect him, letting the thieves win. The choice was impossible. The clock was ticking down to the hearing, and I had 24 hours to decide between justice and my child. I looked at my son, at the fear in his eyes, and I knew there was only one real choice. I couldn't sacrifice him, but I couldn't surrender either. "I need to speak to my lawyer," I told Greeley, my voice flat. "Alone." He smiled, thinking he'd won. He and the mediator stepped outside with Claire, leaving David and me in the living room. The moment the door closed, I grabbed David's shoulders. "Listen to me. They think they have us cornered. That means they're not being careful." I pointed to the vintage lamp on the side table, a family heirloom, and hidden within its brass base was a backup audio recorder Marcus had installed after the cameras were found. They just outlined their entire extortion scheme in my living room. It's being uploaded to a secure server right now. David's eyes widened, a spark of hope. We had one last card to play, and they had just handed it to us. I called Sarah Cohen, my lawyer, on speakerphone. "We're not withdrawing the motion. We're expanding it. We add counts of extortion and witness intimidation, and we have a fresh, recorded confession." Sarah didn't hesitate. "I'll draft the supplemental filing and call the judge's clerk. We're going to ask for an emergency hearing tomorrow. This ends now." When Greeley and Claire came back inside, I met his gaze. "We reject your offer. We'll see you in court." His smugness evaporated, replaced by a flicker of unease. He hadn't expected a fight. They left, their threats hanging in the air, now evidence. The emergency hearing was set for 10 a.m. the next morning. This time, it wasn't in a family court chamber, but in a main courtroom. The stakes had drawn a heavier gavel. Judge Alina Ramos presided, known for being no-nonsense. Claire, Greeley, and their lawyer sat at one table. Dr. Evans, represented by his own counsel, sat nearby. Sarah, David, and I sat at the other. The air was thick with tension. Sarah presented our case methodically. She walked the judge through the timeline, starting with the staged incidents caught on video. She played the clips, Claire smiling at the camera, turning on the stove, rehearsing her testimony. She presented the forensic authentication. Then she introduced the email chain titled Project Patriarch, detailing the liquidation plan and the mention of Dr. Evans's cooperation. Finally, she played the audio from the previous day. Greeley's voice filled the courtroom, clear and cold, offering the deal and threatening David's ruin if I refused. You could hear a pin drop. Claire stared straight ahead, her face a stone mask. Greeley looked at his lawyer, who had gone pale. Sarah saved the bombshell for last. "Your Honor, this is not an isolated family dispute. It is part of a pattern." She entered into evidence the documents on the Bergman case and the other similar guardianship where Martin Greeley and Dr. Evans's roles intersected. This is a criminal conspiracy to exploit the elderly, using the guardianship system as a weapon. We request the court dissolve the temporary order, dismiss the petition with prejudice, and refer this matter, and all related past cases, to the district attorney's office for investigation. The judge took a long moment, reviewing the thick file in front of her. She looked at Claire's lawyer. "Counselor, do you have any response to these allegations, supported by video, forensic analysis, and audio recording?" The lawyer stood, flustered. Your Honor, my client was acting out of concern. The evidence is being taken out of context. The recordings are private conversations. The recordings were made in my client's home, which was under unlawful surveillance installed by the petitioner, Sarah interjected smoothly. There is no expectation of privacy for conspirators plotting a crime on the victim's property. Judge Ramos held up a hand. She turned to Dr. Evans. Dr. Evans, you are under oath. Did you receive a $10,000 payment connected to your evaluation of Mr. Vance? Evans, sweating, took the stand. He denied it. Any donations to my research foundation are anonymous and unrelated to my clinical work. Sarah immediately entered the wire transfer records Marcus had obtained, showing the trail from Greeley's shell company to the foundation to Evans's department. The timeline matched the weeks before my evaluation. Evans's denials crumbled under the weight of the paperwork. The hearing lasted 3 hours. At the end, Judge Ramos didn't even leave the bench to deliberate. She spoke from the bench, her voice ringing with authority. The petition for guardianship of Robert Vance is dismissed, with prejudice. The temporary emergency order is vacated, effective immediately. All frozen accounts are to be unfrozen. Control of all property and assets is fully restored to Mr. Vance. She turned a withering gaze to the other table. The evidence presented today depicts a calculated, malicious scheme to defraud a competent man and plunder his assets. It appears to involve abuse of the judicial process, fraud, and likely criminal acts. She then issued the orders we'd hoped for. She referred the matter to the district attorney for criminal investigation. She also filed a judicial misconduct complaint against the judge who had granted the ex parte order based solely on Dr. Evans's tainted declaration. Finally, she ordered Claire Vance and Martin Greeley to pay all of my legal fees and court costs, totaling over $120,000. It was a total rout. The gavel fell, it was over. In the hallway, Claire didn't look at me. Greeley was already on his phone, barking at someone. Dr. Evans hurried out, surrounded by his lawyer. The system had corrected, but the scars remained. The criminal investigation moved quickly. Within a month, the district attorney convened a grand jury. Based on the evidence from our case and the reopened Bergman case, indictments were handed down. Claire, Martin Greeley, and Dr. Alan Evans were charged with conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse, fraud, perjury, and corruption. Claire was also charged with unlawful surveillance and filing a false police report. They all pled not guilty, but the evidence was overwhelming. 6 months later, to avoid a trial, Claire accepted a plea deal. She testified against her brother and Evans in exchange for a reduced sentence. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Martin Greeley, as the mastermind with a prior record, received 15 years. Dr. Evans, whose testimony revealed a pattern of accepting donations in at least 3 other cases, was stripped of his medical license and sentenced to 8 years. The network was broken. David and I spent those months rebuilding. He moved out of the guest house and into an apartment of his own. We started therapy both individually and together. The trust was shattered, but we laid one brick at a time. He sold his share of the joint account with Claire and used it to pay off his debts. He found a new job away from the shadow of her influence. We talked about everything: his guilt, my anger, the manipulation he'd fallen for. It was painful, but it was honest. I returned to Vance and Associates. My staff had held the fort, bewildered by the temporary freeze but loyal. We secured new projects. The business wasn't just an asset anymore. It was proof I had taken my life back. The final surprise came from the civil suit. After the criminal convictions, Sarah helped me file a civil lawsuit against Claire, Greeley, and Evans for damages. The court awarded me a judgment of $2.5 million for emotional distress, legal fees, and punitive damages. It was a symbolic victory. I knew I'd likely never collect a dime from Claire or Greeley, and Evans's assets were seized by the state. But the judgment was a permanent public record of their wrongdoing. The true closure came from an unexpected place. A state legislator, hearing about my case through the news coverage, reached out. He was drafting a new law dubbed Robert's Law, aimed at reforming emergency guardianship proceedings. It would require mandatory court-appointed advocates for the alleged incapacitated person in ex parte hearings, stricter scrutiny of evaluator conflicts of interest, and heavier penalties for fraudulent petitions. My nightmare was being used to protect others. One evening, a year after the hearing, I was on my terrace, the same one where Claire had staged so many concerned conversations. The sunset painted the sky in oranges and purples. David was coming over for dinner. We were grilling, just the two of us. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The house was quiet, but it was my silence. The cameras were gone. The lies were over. I had saved my son, not by surrendering, but by fighting smarter. I had saved myself, not just from guardianship, but from a lifetime of being a victim in my own story. The justice wasn't sweet. It was solid. It was the foundation upon which I could rebuild a life of my own choosing. The surveillance had been meant to capture my decline. Instead, it captured the truth of her crime, and in doing so, gave me back my future. The system designed to protect the vulnerable had been weaponized against me. My story isn't just about catching a liar with her own cameras. It's about a loophole in the law, a pressure point that predators know how to find. Guardianship is a necessary tool for those who truly need it, but in the wrong hands, it becomes the perfect crime. The victim is discredited in advance. The evidence is curated by the abuser, and the law, moving swiftly to protect, can become the instrument of theft. David and I found our way back to each other, but our family is forever altered. Trust, once fractured that deeply, doesn't heal into what it was. It rebuilds into something new, more conscious, more guarded. I look at him now and see not just my son, but a man who was also a victim of the same sophisticated manipulation. We are both survivors. My case exposed a network, but for everyone uncovered, how many are still in the shadows? The Department of Justice estimates over 5 million older adults are abused each year. Financial exploitation alone steals billions. The scam my daughter-in-law used, manufacturing evidence to trigger an emergency order, is a known playbook in the world of elder fraud. It preys on the court's good intentions and the medical experts' assumed neutrality. So the lingering question isn't just how I fought back. It's this: in a world where the tools of care can be twisted into tools of control, how do we tell the difference between protection and predation? The answer lies in skepticism, in due process, in never allowing one side, no matter how convincing, to have the only voice in the room. My victory was in the evidence, the cold digital truth of the footage that showed the crime in real time. Without it, I would be in a facility, my life's work dissolved, my son broken. That truth is what saved us. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about the fragile line between family and foe, then do us a favor. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit the like button to help others find this channel. And subscribe, because we track these real-world stories of betrayal and justice every single week. Your click ensures these warnings get heard. Thank you for listening. Stay vigilant.